Hello, everyone, and very good afternoon from Espoo, Finland. My name is Lotta Koskimies, and I will be moderating this final Wednesday webinar for 2022 by the Business Technology Forum. So glad that so many of you have joined us today, and reminding you that this session will also be recorded. So if anyone didn't make it here today, this can also be viewed afterwards. During the next 30 minutes, we will first go briefly through some BT Forum news. And after that, I will have the great pleasure of introducing the CEO and founder of Xonetic, our implementation partner for UK and Ireland, who will then share their experience on the maturity analysis conducted on the basis of Business Technology Standard capability model. So few words about the Business Technology Forum. It is a community that co-creates the business technology standard, which is freely available for anyone to use. And it is also suitable for anyone. Doesn't matter if it's a smaller company or a larger one, public sector, third sector organization. It is really co-created with a broader community with universities, public sector and private sector companies. And it is about sharing best practices and experiences for a broader community. It has been verified by King's College London and also Aalto University in Finland. So it has an academic stance as well. Most of the material is available open source. So if you navigate to managebt.org, you will find the standard itself, but also have access to other useful materials without any cost. Most of the material is available in English and in Finnish for the moment. We see that this is really a revolutionary ecosystem, and it is something that we want to keep evergreen. And that is also where we need our implementation partners like Xonetic, and then for the Nordics, Sofigate to step in as well. So everything that we co-create with companies or organizations or individuals teaches new things and new best practices. And then we want to bring that into the business technology standard and also share it with you, with all the community who can then take advantage of all the learnings that we have gotten. To interact and to engage with this community, you can, for example, navigate to managebt.org. You can download the Business Technology Standard as an ebook and read it, refer to any parts of it in your work, or check up useful information related to different business technology management key areas. It is also possible to validate your learnings. So we also offer a green card certification exam without any cost. And I know that many companies are really loving this advantage because you can actually use it to leverage the knowledge base and to improve the knowledge base of an entire organization. So that is really, we are so happy that we can bring that to the reach of everyone. Then in the managebt.org website, it is also possible to download posters that you can then use, for example, to have discussions with the different groups of people on key areas such as roles and responsibilities or project models or other. Then we organize webinars, trainings in Malaga, for example, and online, and different community events to co-create with others, such as, for example, smart cities within the EU. And now, before I let Nick Russell take over, let's just briefly have a look at what we are talking about when we talk about the capability model. So that is what you are seeing in the picture right now. This is maybe the most renowned picture of the entire business technology standard. And I know that our founder, Juha Huovinen, often thinks of it like a hand. So you can see the thumb, and that will be the red area that kind of goes through all the other streams in the picture. So you have the demand that actually goes through the strategy and governance, sourcing and optimization, development, and services. So this is an interactive image also available in the managebt.org, and you can just click on any of the tiles to then see that what is really important, what have been the learnings that you can also take from the business technology standard to your work. So you will have clear, common language explanations of all of these areas. So this is the capability model that Nick Russell has also utilized with Xonetic when they have been conducting the maturity analysis with the higher education sector in the UK. So Nick, so happy to have you here this afternoon. Warmly welcome to share your experiences on the capability model and the maturity assessments that you have been conducting.
Thank you, Lotte. Lovely to be here. Hello to everybody. You can see maybe in the corner that I am ably supported by a Christmas elf that has come down from Lapland, I think. Maybe now it's December here in the UK.
Does he have a name, your elf?
I think his name is Elfie.
Elfie. Okay, so glad that Elfie also could join us this afternoon.
So we have double support. We have a special guest star today. So I'll talk a little bit about the BT standard in the UK firstly. So I've been doing a lot of work with the university sector, the higher education sector in the UK, through primarily two kind of leaders in the community. And the first one is King's College London. We've been working with the standard and King's for must be coming up 3, maybe even 4 years now. So they've been involved for a long time, and they're a very positive and fantastic supporter of the standard. And UCISA, which is a unit, which is a body for all of higher education in the UK, and so UCISA's job is to promote digital transformation across the sector. So working with those two groups, we've had a lot of discussion, as you can see from the map. Quite a lot of institutions have been very excited and interested in the standard, and we've been on a journey of understanding the standard, understanding how it can support universities, academic institutions, and then trying to understand how can we get universities started, and especially with the current climate, universities don't have huge budgets they have huge challenges, but not huge budgets. So I'll talk a little bit about how we were a bit creative in the way that we approached this from a commercial perspective as well. If we move to the next slide. So obviously the standard is fantastically broad, as Lotte mentioned, and it covers everything you might want a digital savvy business to be thinking about when it comes to managing technology. But that broadness and depth can also be a challenge when it's in terms of getting started, understanding where to start and how to start, and understanding which aspects of the model you may be good at already and not good at already, and then with that information thinking about how you might move forwards. So we had that challenge across the university sector, and we created this idea of a simple maturity assessment, and it is simple enough to be easy for institutions to run. It doesn't take a long time. It's not very expensive, but it gives quite a valuable insight in terms of where they are from a maturity perspective. So we did have a lot of discussion about we could make it even more scientific, but the more scientific you make it, the harder it is to run. So you'll see that we blend a scientific approach with a more opinion-based approach, and that's worked pretty well. So we're now saying to customers in the UK that a really great place to start for an understanding of the model and thinking about how to implement it is running the assessment. Should we move on? So it actually takes 5 weeks And it's only in week 1 and week 3 and week 5 where the organisation needs to be involved, and in weeks 2 and weeks 4, that's where the partner will be doing analysis. Okay, so we essentially run what we call sprints. There's a sprint in week 1 where we ask questions of the participants in the assessment, and you might ask who the participants should be. And we basically ask for, there's no restriction in terms of the number. Actually, you can be 50, 100 people, doesn't really matter, but we really ask for people who are both inside of technology and also outside of technology, because we really want to get a good understanding of how technology is working from a holistic perspective. So we create an audience who will run the assessment, who will take part in the assessment. I'll talk to you in a moment about what that involves on a daily basis. But there are 2 sprints. So in the first week, we primarily involve business people and technology people together. And in the third week, which is the second sprint, we primarily involve technology people, but there may be some business people who are also interested in understanding a little bit more deeply about the standard, and that's also okay. Right at the end, we have this optional sector update. So we've been doing something interesting because we've been, I talked about a creative approach. In order to make it easier for institutions, we've been running what we call a cohort, which is a group of 3 to 6 universities at a time through the assessment. And we've now done actually 13 in total, which means we're starting to build a sector view, which is the piece at the end, which is for you CISA useful, because we can start to understand, does the sector have the similar weaknesses and strengths, or is it, or how confined to a single institution are those things? So that's what the 6th week is. But for a individual customer running the assessment, that's probably not necessary. Should we move forwards? So I'll just talk about what is involved. So during the first sprint, for example, we use a tool called Housebase. The idea of the tool is to make it really, really easy, super easy and super straightforward for participants, especially if they are business participants who, maybe not that interested in technology, frankly, the inner workings of technology at least. So we use a digital tool. It's available on a mobile or on a tablet or laptop, and the whole idea is you spend no more than 15 minutes of your time through the whole of the first week. So an individual participant only spends around 15 minutes in that first week. And the participant can actually choose, do I do that all in one go Monday morning, or do I spread it out through the week? It's totally flexible. They can choose, engage at a time that makes sense and in a way that makes sense. You can obviously engage further, and one of the things that we look for example, the first picture here, we have a simple place your pin on the quadrant to identify where you think we might be, depending on the question. So it's a very simple activity, but then you can maybe make comments about it, and you can see comments that other people have made. So you have the opportunity to engage more if you want to, depending on how enthusiastic an individual participant feels about each section. The middle one in there again is a kind of question based. Choose whether you strongly agree, disagree against the statement, and then you can also see automatically what others are saying. You don't know who has said what, but you see the general sentiment appearing as you engage with this assessment. And then the last one is based around this one is sliders. You can make a slider move up and down whether you agree or not agree with the statements, and you can also engage in chat again around the topics. So the more comments and chat that you get from your colleagues and the other participants, the richer the conversation becomes. So that's a sense of.
Could you give an example, Nick, to what types of questions you might have there.
Well, I mean, in the first week, we're asking what we call non-qualitative questions. So we'll ask people how they feel about IT. How do they feel about the delivery of technology? Does it work in it? Is it working well or not well? So we can ask some quite non-qualitative statements just to get a sense of how people feel about it. And then we will ask, do you think we're really good at this aspect, or do you think we're not really good at this aspect? So there's a whole set of questions which we used in a standard way across all institutions. But actually, if we were to run this with an individual business, there's an option to tailor the questions if required. But the more we tailor the questions, the more we go away from our body of evidence. So there's a kind of double-edged sword there. Should we move on? So yeah, I just touched on this. So the first week is what we call non-qualitative. So really, it's opinion-based, and we'll get a view. I'll show you some outputs in a moment. And the second part is qualitative, where we will say, okay, if we take a capability, this is the description of what poor, optimized, and great look like. Which one? Where do you think you are? So then it's much more scientific rather than it being opinion-based. Let's move on. So the non-qualitative output, you can see actually the picture on the right. We can do a thing called sentiment analysis. We can start to understand how people feel about technology and what areas they think are potentially the weakest or strongest. But then we can also provide quite detailed analysis in terms of which areas of the business technology model are the strongest and the weakest. And this is this type of information that starts to become really interesting to people who take part in the standard, in the assessment. Should we move on again? The qualitative output, again, we can get into quite a bit of detail around which parts of the capability map that you showed earlier are the strongest and the weakest. And by the way, a weak score isn't necessarily a bad thing. You can choose not to invest in a discipline, and that's totally okay. So a low score is not necessarily a bad score, but it does show you your general maturity. And then in the output, which is the report you receive at the end, you can start to see here where we provide a lot more detail around what the strengths and weaknesses are and what they mean in terms of the model. And we make something called observations, which are not recommendations, because at the end of the day, it's quite a fast assessment. So there may be things we don't know, but observations based on what we have found. Can move to the.
Just if I may comment that
Sure.
Here, as you have utilized the capability model as the basis for the assessment, so then what you are displaying here is the value for each of these areas that then kind of the score that the organization received based on the points that the interviewees would give on the online platform, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So this could also be used individually, of course. You are free to apply this capability model also, like in that sense, by yourself, to open up a discussion and discuss like, hey, what about our service portfolio? It says here that we should consider these and these aspects. So do we agree with the business and IT that it is working well, or that there is room for development, and go through the entire capability model like that in a workshop? But of course, the advantage when using this online platform and facilitation by, for example, an implementation partner of a business technology forum is that the data that you will receive, it's very solid and very convincing, and it requires a lot less resources from your own people.
Yeah.
So you get this really, really good structure for what you are doing.
I think one of the interesting things, if you just go back to that one before, is we can start to look for patterns as well. So you can see what we've done here is we've grouped together certain capabilities, and we can see that a weak a weakness in a certain set of capabilities, we can often draw a conclusion from what that actually means in practice. So translating what the findings are from our experience of implementing the model, and also our experience of running the assessment, and providing really good insight is the universities have loved it. It's been a fantastic tool. They found in some areas it's about what they thought. We think we're quite good, but we're not sure, and it's a validation, which is really positive. And in others, sometimes it could be, well, we thought we were better at a certain topic, and we realise now that perhaps not everyone feels the same way. So it's really, really super useful tool. And I think without fail, the universities, all of the CIOs that have been taken part from each institution, they've all said it's been a fantastic way of driving conversation across the business about how technology is working. So it's not just about what the technology organization is doing in terms of which project it's running or what services it's delivering. It's about how the service is delivered. So it's been really, really super interesting to do with the university sector, and super exciting to kind of create such a simple but powerful tool, really, to help kickstart a business technology journey. Obviously, you don't need to be a beginner in business technology to run the assessment. The other thing is you can run it at any point in your journey, and just to make a checkpoint about where you are and have you made the progress that you thought you wanted to make at a certain point in time. And certainly that's been interesting for King's College London, because they have been using the model for quite a while. So gaining another view in terms of where they really are has been very helpful for them. I don't know whether we have any questions in the comments, but I think it's possible for people to raise questions if they want to. So
yes, it is possible to post questions to the chat. So I think we will have a couple of minutes for the questions. If you have something you'd like to have clarified.
So just looking at this is actually the last slide, I believe. So one thing I talked about, because we have worked with UCISA, we've been able to start to build a sector model. And this is really interesting for a variety of reasons. So the first thing I have to say is there's about 100 institutions in the UK, and we've covered 13. So we're only at about 13% industry coverage. So it's probably a bit early days to call it a sector view, but certainly it's an indicator. And I think what's interesting about the picture on the right here is you can see that the top green line there is the highest scores. And that could be from it's not one institution, that could be from any institution. So the highest any institution received was the green bar, and conversely the lowest scores are the bottom red bar. And you can see therefore there's quite a range in terms of maturity across the different capabilities. And one thing that we really found interesting is you can see pretty much across the board that the demand capability, which is the place where you plan and manage technology change before starting projects to implement them, is the weakest across the sector so far. And I think when you translate that into all of the universities know they need to, because of the obvious shift to non-physical learning, to online learning and other learning channels because of the lockdown and COVID challenges we've had, but also the institutions are expanding globally, not just in the UK. So that means they need to provide services digitally. So they have this massive challenge to digitalize and transform their institutions, but they don't really have enough capability and understanding to help drive and shape that demand. So that's been a really helpful thing for individual CIOs to understand. It really makes a conversation easier with the business to say, well, look, the reason why we are potentially not transforming at the speed that we want to transform at is possibly we have some weaknesses in some of these demand areas. So that's been a really excellent insight, and I think it's a actually common insight you can take outside of the higher education sector into many other businesses. I think my experience across other sectors is that this area of the model is often fairly immature, and lots of companies talking about a mountain of work to get through, and how do you prioritize, and why are projects running late, and all of these types of challenges. So we expect this sector view to extend and expand over this coming year. So this time next year, we hope to be, maybe up to 30-40% coverage, and then we'll really start to have a good sector view. I'm going to stop there because we've got roughly 5 minutes left. Lotte, were there any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat for the moment, but here is also the contact information then for Xonetic if you are attending from the UK and would like to engage with Nick for further discussions. And then still a recap that you can always access the model wherever you are by navigating to manage.bet.org. And even this capability model, this was an example now of conducting the maturity assessment with a partner. But of course, that can also be done individually or without a partner if you prefer, because all the material, all the information is there. So, but then of course, with a partner, you get a lot more of stance in terms of analytics and visuals and translating the results and the outcomes of the work you are doing. And of course, the platform makes it so much easier for all the business and IT representatives to engage. And yeah, I did mention that in the UK and Ireland, it is Xonetic, the implementation partner. And then for the Nordics, you may contact Sofigate if you would like to have some support with this work. Then a good way to engage and keep up to date of whatever is upcoming with the Business Technology Forum is to follow us on LinkedIn, because all the current upcoming activities and like I have here at the background these pieces of art that are created with artificial intelligence based on the business technology standard images actually. So you can find all that also by following us on LinkedIn. But if no questions come up, I think we will start wrapping up this session. And thank you, Nick, so much for finding time in your busy schedule and joining us for this webinar this afternoon. I wish you a really, really nice holiday season. And for those of you who are in Finland in January, on the 18th of January, we can catch up at this event taking place in the Music Hall of Helsinki to learn more about business technology and how much of acrobacy and magic you actually do need to succeed with the digital transformation. But thank you all a lot for joining us this afternoon, and this webinar will also become available on our website. So extremely good and free to use always for you. Thank you, Nick, and thank you all the attendees this afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.